Let's move on. Speaking of liars, speaking of scumbags, and speaking of potential justice, let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Some real weird moving and shaking happening in the courtroom yesterday. So SBF, in a very confusing courtroom appearance, appears to have now agreed to be extradited to the United States. However, this all came amidst an insane court hearing where the lawyers had gathered in Bahamian court, where SBF's lawyer was about to agree to extradition. But then he said he was, quote, shocked to see SBF actually in the court and said he needed to then talk to them. Then the judge granted this. SBF and his lawyer were conferring. The Bahamian lawyers appeared to be in chaos. And ultimately, the end result appears, and again, appears to be, remember, we are not dealing with the U.S. Department of Justice here. He appears to say he will agree to be extradited to the United States. Once he is, he will be arraigned in the federal district court in Manhattan and likely detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, pending a bail hearing. It is very unlikely he will be granted bail. However, given flight risk and all of that, although it's technically possible. Why does any of this matter? The moment that he gets to the U.S., that's when actual U.S. legal proceedings can begin. And Krystal, SBF is saying the reason why he's being agreed to the extradited to the United States is because he, quote, wants to do right by his customers and make his customers whole. Now, I think that has to do less with him appearing in U.S. court and more likely to do with the actual money that he allegedly stole. The also interesting corollary to this is that you and I were looking. One of the prison that he's being held in is allegedly one of the worst in the entire world. It's not exactly rated as a 5-star facility. So he may actually feel that being held in the Bahamas, especially given his medley of like drugs and, health conditions and all of that, he's probably better off, from a health perspective, being in the United States. But overall, it's a big, big problem for him. And it also just shows you the amount of chaos that's happening right now in the Bahamas with the legal system, where they are trying their best to finesse what's going on here.
Yeah, there was speculation immediately that he would drop his attempt to fight extradition once he got into this prison and realized just how horrific it ultimately is. And that seems to be exactly what has actually happened, is he's hoping that potentially the situation in the U.S. federal prison system is better than the situation that he's facing right now in the Bahamas. Sad statement on the state of both prison systems, that, this is what he's ultimately weighing and calculating based on. But yeah, sort of chaos in the courtroom yesterday, but ultimately it looks like he is set to be extradited. And the other thing, Saagar, is originally, remember, Matt Stiller is pointing out, it can take years. If you fight your extradition, it can actually take years to be extradited to the U.S. We now will see a much more expedited process so that the criminal proceedings can move forward here in the States.
Yeah, and at the same time, we're actually learning a little bit more about his campaign finance operation. Let's put this up there on the screen. Brian Schwartz from CNBC going through the indictment. What he shows here is that Bankman-Fried and co-conspirators, quote, worked with others known and unknown who knowingly combined, conspired, and agreed to defraud the United States to intentionally skirt campaign finance laws. They are reportedly right now looking at the former head of engineering, Nishad Singh, the former CEO of FTX Digital Markets, Ryan Salem, who was one of the top Republican donors in the entire country, number 10 overall as a GOP donor. They collectively contributed some $70 million towards the 2022 midterms, which is insane. And SBF himself gave some $40 million. What they are alleging here is basically a straw donation scheme of epic proportions, and also including and possibly ensnaring his own brother, Gabe Bankman-Fried, diverting some $12 million to his brother's nonprofit. Another Mind the Gap super PAC, which was his mother, personally donated some $1 million towards, mainly towards Democratic issues, and also then using cutouts and others and friends to give to his parents' nonprofit. So overall, you're basically seeing a fraudulent embezzlement scheme of massive proportions that has major political ramifications, because what the indictment, the SEC, both and the DOJ lay out is that he was diverting FTX customer funds to Alameda Research, his privately held hedge fund. And then Alameda Research was both loaning billions of dollars to him, to other FTX executives, of which they were using for political donations. But Alameda Research itself, at the entity level, was also giving donations, both to SBF affiliated nonprofits. All of this, of course, is a nightmare for him from a tax fraud and wire fraud perspective. But it gives you just a good deep dive into some $22 million last year just from SBF's brother entity that was able to be raised. It doesn't disclose its donors per se, but it does show that Alameda Research itself gave $12 million to them just in a single period of late last year. I mean, and again, all of this is being funded with actual dollars from FTX customers. That's what makes it go so skeevy. This is not money that he rightfully earned himself. These are customer funds, according right now to the SEC and to the DOJ.
There's also some revelations here about his sort of personal, promotional, and brand building, because, you know, he always positioned his political giving as like, oh, this isn't about my own personal profit. I just want to make sure that we're ready for the next pandemic. This is all about pandemic preparedness, which was always like, yeah, okay, buddy. But you see it really clearly here with the donations to his brother's nonprofit, which was called Guarding Against Pandemics. And then the brother turns around and gives a bunch of this money to, you know, direct Democratic groups. So like Voto Latino, which spent the money opposing Gavin Newsom's recall. It's like, maybe you could make some sort of tangential connection to pandemic preparedness, but this just seems like, you know, standard issue Democratic political fundraising. Same thing with his mom had this political advocacy organization that I actually knew about. It's called Mind the Gap. He was donating to her as well, or through his cutouts or through Alameda or whatever. So basically, he's accused of violating campaign finance law in almost every way that you can. Straw donors, illegal corporate contributions, and also using effectively stolen funds in order to fund this giving. And then the other allegation here as well is that, you know, he thought that the press would like him giving to Democrats and that this would build his personal brand. And so then he uses these other cutouts to give to the Republicans he wants to ultimately win over. So it's just, this piece is maybe the part at this point I'm the most interested in, because, you know, SBF's going to go to prison. His empire's collapsed. It's going to be interesting to see some more of the details about how all this went down. But you still have these politicians who took this money, are still in office. And there are still a lot of questions about, like, okay, well, what did you do after you got that money? How did you serve this gigantic donor who contributed in some case? I mean, gave millions of dollars to Joe Biden. You know, did you call off the SEC from an earlier investigation that could have saved a lot of customers a lot of pain? That's the piece that I continue to be really interested in and is a really going concern, because, again, these people are still office holders. And so they still need to be held to account, even above and beyond SBF ultimately having his day in court and paying a probably very heavy price for all of this.
100%. I hope that the clawback laws don't work out so well in the politicians' favor, and that every single one of them has to detail exactly how much they got and how much they've given back. So the feds, I'm calling on you to do that, something useful.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.